Bill Self said he's feeling great, gave some updates on some summer standouts for KU basketball and more we get into on this bonus episode of Locked on Jayhawks.
You are Locked on Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day, and thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition, Bill Self spoke to the media for the first time since undergoing his heart procedure, gave some updates on his health, coaching staff change for KU basketball, the new roster with some summer standouts. We're going to get into all of it on this bonus episode of Locked on Jayhawks. And again, thank you for tuning in any way you can. Don't forget to check out some of our recent episodes. We talked a little on Stories from the Fog, a cool book that's going to be coming out, and got some cool KU basketball stuff, plenty of KU football content that has come out and is going to be coming out as we are about a week away from the first KU football game of the season. So we're going to start right here. Bill Self spoke to the media for the first time since his heart procedure, since the heart scare, the health scare, whatever you want to call it. And he was asked many questions, as you would imagine, about just how he's feeling and his health in general. And going over some of the quotes he said, "I'm feeling pretty good, probably doing about as well as you can do." So obviously, yeah, that's great news, right? He said, "I've had more stuff going on that I haven't gone public with what it is, and I'm not going to. The similarities are I had stints back then and I had stints this time," he later said. So, maybe there's some other health stuff going on when that first thing happened. We don't need to speculate about what those are, right? That's his private health information that he clearly said he doesn't want to talk about. But going into the idea that he's saying, "I'm feeling pretty good," he said later, "I actually think I'm better today than I was then. If we practice tomorrow, I'd be 100% out there," he later said as well. The fact of him saying I'm better now than I was then, like, that tells you that, okay, this is not something where it's, okay, he had this thing done a couple of years ago, now he's getting worse. It feels like the opposite is basically what he's saying. Okay, I had this thing a couple of years ago. I had this thing now. I'm getting better, though. I'm on the mend with where I'm going in this positive way. And that's obviously great news for him and everything. And obviously the big question, something we've been talking about here with Locked on Jayhawks, has been, what does this health stuff mean for Bill Self in terms of the longevity of his coaching career at Kansas? And I've said, it wouldn't shock, I don't think, anybody if this were Bill Self's final season in Kansas. I've also said, though, that it probably honestly wouldn't shock me if he had so much fun coaching this season, and whether that's in the back of his mind or not, I don't think it is, to be completely honest with you. He had so much fun coaching this season, coaching Darren Peterson, and he's like, I want to do this a little bit longer. Or it still wouldn't shock me if he coaches 7 more seasons or whatever it ends up being at Kansas, right? I think everything is open, and for somebody who loves to compete and loves, I think, coaching as much as Bill Self does, he's not going to give it up easily, And so this quote then becomes very important. He said, "I asked the surgeon, what do you think? Is this something that should change my way of thinking on stuff? And he said, do you love what you do? I said, yes. So he said, keep doing it. There hasn't been any thoughts like that," is what Bill Self said. So knowing all that, Bill Self basically sounds like, okay, not going to be any problems this year. Sounds like he's going to be good to go. Like you said, there's the practice thing, that if there's a practice tomorrow, like I'm coaching, that tells you that. And he kind of went into too that, like, the first go around, he was a little bit more limited than he is this time. So that's all great news for him, and both in terms of this year and probably telling you that, yeah, maybe if you were chalking up, okay, who's going to be the head coach of Kansas basketball in 2026 to 2027, the overwhelming favorite would probably be still Bill Self at that point in time. All right, he talked a little bit about coaching staff changes and some of the new players, some summer standouts. We'll get to that next. Today's bonus episode of Locked on Jayhawks is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day. That's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, Patrick Mahomes probably not too happy with the discourse going online right now, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ. By the way, I like the Panthers for that. Not the Super Bowl part, the surprise division winner. Before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. And we're talking college basketball on this episode with Bill Self. You can get early college basketball futures right now, too. You can get Darren Peterson plus 850 to win the Wooden Award. You can get Kansas to win the national championship at 20-1. Get those at FanDuel. Get some of the football futures on Futures Day on August 26th. Visit the FanDuel app. Start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. So there's a staff change for KU basketball, and Bill Self announced that Chase Buford got hired away by the Denver Nuggets. So pretty cool. I guess he gets to go from coaching KU to coaching a former Jayhawk in Christian Brown, who is well on his way to earning over $100 million contract on his next contract. Mentions it's a great gig for him, right? So Buford has been somebody who has kind of worked up the coaching ranks. He was coaching in the G League, Australia, gets to college. I wonder if he, going through the college game was like, I want to get back in the pro game. I enjoy coaching that better in today's day and age with the transfer portal. But it's obviously a great opportunity for him coaching with the Denver Nuggets, a team in the NBA, but also one that's very good and has title aspirations themselves. Now, what that does for Kansas is leaves an opening on the coaching staff. And we'll see where they go with this. There's the different levels of like assistants that Kansas has. There's like the assistants that are on the bench. Then there's the guys who are maybe further down and, have coaching roles to certain extents, but also administrative roles to other extents. And I do believe Buford was getting promoted up this year into one of those top, positions. Obviously, they added Jock Vaughn externally. You have Norm Roberts retiring. So you would think Jock Vaughn takes Norm Roberts' seat on the bench. Is somebody else, leaving the bench, or was Buford going to be off the bench and more an advisory role? I don't know, but we'll see what the replacement would be for KU. So that'll be something to look out for in the future. He did say, I'm in the process of looking into some different things. I feel like I've got the scope kind of narrowed down. So that kind of tells you that he's probably got a couple candidates that he's got to narrow it down to on kind of a short list. And maybe it just becomes about, okay, which one's going to take the job, getting the papers signed, which one do I choose if I'm down between 2-3 guys. But that does make it seem like, to me, it is something that I'm almost expecting news on soon-ish, based on him saying, we've got it kind of narrowed down, but also I don't think it's going to be something that, is going to be, we have to do it right now at this very second. I'd imagine you'd want to have it by the start of the school year, which is in, 2 weeks, week and a half at this point in time. And then he also talked a little bit about the new roster. Obviously, they're going to have a new coach to coach that new roster to a certain degree. He said, I like where we're at. The thing about it is, if you're going to err, because it's an exact science, you may want to err on the side of athleticism or shooting or whatever. And I felt like we're so much more physically athletic than what we were last year, and that excites me. So he's basically saying a quote of like, basically, I think you see him in it. He says it's an inexact science. He's talking about the transfer portal and building a roster. And I think last year, and I guess the last couple of years, is very much an indication of him of saying, okay, this isn't an exact science. It's not as simple as, to a certain standpoint, like I'm sure from Bill Self's perspective, and this has probably worked for him in a very real way, from the high school recruiting ranks, it has been about get the best talent, make it work, develop them. That goes out the window a bit with the transfer portal. Something else he talked about a little later on was that guys, sometimes it's easier to coach freshmen than transfers because they have their own way of doing things that they learned at their previous stop. And so going all out for talent might work at the high school level. I think he's kind of learned, and we've seen this approach during the offseason, that's not always the case in the transfer portal. I do think he has kind of learned that lesson with how it's kind of come together in this portal. But the specific part where he said you may want to err on the side of athleticism or shooting or whatever, I think that's him saying that, some coaches are going to go for shooting. Some coaches are going to go for whatever their preference is. You could tell the emphasis based on, you can't tell from me reading the quote, but if you watch the press conference, the athleticism part, and obviously he, emphasizes at the end by saying we're so much more physically athletic than we were last year. And that excites me. I think this is going to be a really fun team to watch. And I think that just gives them a different level of defense that they can get to in terms of being more matchup proof and being so much fun in transition and being a team that Bill Self is just really going to enjoy. So who are some players during the summer that have been standouts so far. Bill Self mentioned some names. We'll get to that next. Today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Rougiette. Guys, you probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's Rougiette, Rougiet.com/LockedOnCollege, and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Some summer standouts that Bill Self mentioned. There's a question from Gary Bedore, Kansas City Star, on the 3 transfers and how they fit in the summer. And Bill Self said they're all doing well to a certain extent. Now, he's not going to throw one under the bus if it's not the case. But he did say, of the 3, Trey White had the best summer. Trey White's a good player. Now, a couple ways of looking at that. You can look at that and say, if he by far had the best player, what does that mean for the other 2 guys? But let's just focus on the Trey White portion of this thing, because I do think Melvin Council is going to be a Bill Self guy. So maybe if you look at it that way and, say, okay, if Trey White by far the best and Melvin Council is going to be a Bill Self guy, what does that mean for Jaden Dawson? But with Trey White specifically, I mean, they need him to perform well because there aren't a lot of other wings on the roster for Kansas. So that is very important that would be the case. And I think he's just going to be kind of a jack of all trades for KU and do a little bit of everything very well, which is going to be super important as kind of a complementary piece next to Darren Peterson and Flory Badunga. He mentioned some other standouts from the summer. He said, I thought Flory had a great summer. That's great to hear with his development. He also mentioned Kohl Rosario had a great summer, went unprompted to say that. Now, the Flory one, in the question, it mentioned, okay, how are guys like Flory and who else doing? And so Flory gets brought up inherently because it's part of the question, and so it's on your mind. Kohl Rosario was not part of the question. So the fact that Bill Self brought him up means that, yeah, he really did have a great summer. He was followed up on a question from Shreyas Lotta of the Kansas City Star about Kohl as well, and he said, and I took note, there were 4 varies in it. He said he's a very, 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 very bouncy vertical guy. He shoots the ball well. I think Kohl Rosario is going to be a Bill Self guy. And the more we hear, the closer we get to the start of the season, I can't help but wonder if Kohl Rosario has a good month of practice and Jaden Dawson doesn't excel in that month, could Kohl Rosario be ahead of Jaden Dawson in the rotation? We just had our off-ball guard preview, so make sure to check that one out and thank you to the Everydayers if you already did. But some interesting comments, to say the least, from Bill Self. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show. See you next time with LOJ.